everybody, and welcome to the October user group. It's our second last user group for the year, so we'll see you again in November. Then we take a break for the Christmas period, and we'll see you back online at the end of January. But today's all about the new editors, and we wanted to give you some tips on how to streamline your campaign build, looking at these editors specifically. So we'll dive into the email editor to begin with, and then make our way to the landing page editor. And we have some good news in relation to the landing page editor, so I'll progress and let you know what that is when we get to it. But just to let you know who's on the line today, so there's myself, Derek Bell. We have Alvin, who is our new marketing manager at Marketing Cube, and Alvin's also on the line. And most of you will be familiar with Jason, one of our account directors. So both Alvin and Jason will be able to answer questions as we move through the session. This is a bit difficult, I find, to run the webinar and answer all the questions at the same time. So thanks, guys, for your help. So let's have a look at the agenda for today, and we'll get started. So as I said, first things first, we'll look at the new email design editor. We ran a session on this, I think it was in May, earlier this year, potentially, or maybe March, I can't quite remember. We've learned a few things along the way and thought it would be worthwhile to potentially share some of those things with you. So we'll dive into that and give you some tips. You'll find the transition from the email design editor to the landing page design editor very simple. The interfaces are practically the same. It's just that one gives you an email and the other gives you a landing page. So the continuity between the two interfaces makes life a lot easier, which is good news. So one of the first things I wanted to talk to you about, though, and then point 3, we'll go through what's new and what's coming, and that's information for release 18D, which is due in November. But one of the first things I really wanted to talk to you about was just to re-emphasize that there is a lot of information available within the Help Center. Now remember, you've all got access to the Help Center from within Eloqua, and I'll revisit that once we get into the application and show you or remind you as to where that is. But specifically in the context of emails, if you search for email authoring within the Help Center, it'll take you through to a full list of different resources and things that will help. This will be the search result that you would see, and the one at the top is kind of the starting point, and from there you'll find other links that will help you. Initially, once you reach there, you'll find there's also a video that you can get started with, and you can start to work your way through there. Those videos are great. They're pretty short. You'll see there's actually 6 videos in that particular collection. You can just see there roughly the 6 hiding behind there. And so I would certainly encourage you, if you're new to the email editor, I would certainly encourage you to jump in and have a look at some of those videos from Oracle. They certainly give you a great introduction and just stop you running blind, which is good. And the same for the landing page editor as well, same process. So you'll find lots of information in there. Now today we're going to spend most of our time actually in the application itself versus doing too much death by PowerPoint. So if you wanted to open Eloqua on your screen, if you've got 2 screens, or potentially divide your screen in half and have the webinar on one side and the email editor on the other side, you might find that quite helpful. That way you can sort of click through and do the same thing with me. Just a few key points to kick off. One of the key things that we found so far with feedback, certainly from customers, but also ourselves building emails, is that the process is much faster, which has got to be great. If anything, to save time is always a good thing, but at the same time not sacrificing the quality of the output that you're generating. So excited to walk you through some of those tips. One of the key points to remember as well, and just to make sure everybody's clear on this one, is that the HTML editor is not going away. So for those of you who may be working with external agencies where potentially you're having zip files delivered to you that you would upload to Eloqua, you'll be able to continue to do that. That's not going to change. It's the only thing that's changing is that you now have more options. So you'll always be able to upload your HTML, which is great. One of the key things that we found that has certainly sped the process for us at Marketing Cube is the ability to create templates, and so easy to create, and then really speeds the process. And so we're going to show you a few tips and ideas in relation to template build that you might want to consider within your business that will just help to, again, streamline what you're doing. And that's the whole objective of today's session, is to help you from a streamlining point of view. So without any further ado, let's jump in and have a look at the editor. So one of the first things I wanted to show you was how to get to the Help Center for those of you that may be a little bit newer to Eloqua. So over here in the far top right-hand corner, just next to your initials, is a little drop-down menu, and the first one is the Help Center. So when you click on the Help Center, that will open immediately, and that then enables you to perform either a keyword search on what it is you're looking for, or you can actually navigate through the system. And so you'll see here there's the video to watch, there's different information in relation to email client support, so the email clients that work best with the email editor. And then you'll find a whole bunch of tips here on to get started. So creating emails, working with content, writing right to left. If you're in one of the Asian countries or one of the Middle Eastern locations, that may be something that you need to do. So you've got that option there available as well. Buttons, emails, plain text, images, etc. The list goes on. So you'll find a whole range of resources there to assist with that. And while we're here, let me just re-emphasize to some of the other things you can do. So you probably always come in here and do a keyword search. If you click on the Get Started, that big green button, you'll find a whole range of getting started for marketers courses that you can do. These are really just prescribed journeys or learning paths that you can follow. So first campaign, welcome campaigns, segmentation, forms, landing pages, emails, etc. These are just brilliant in the way that they're laid out. There's shots, screenshots all the way through. Clicking on the bottom there, create the first email, and then off you go. It just gives you a complete range of options, etc., that you can follow, so you can see what you're doing on your screen. And this is largely what we're going to do today, is kind of walk through this particular process and help you understand what the different bits and pieces are and kind of how they work together. So that's the Help Center. So again, it can't emphasize enough how brilliant the call center, it's not the call center, the Help Center is. You'll find it very, very helpful, I'm sure. All right, so we're back at the email homepage within Eloqua. We've taken off from the home screen and we're directly here at the email page. So if we click on Create an Email, for those of you, well, everybody has access now. You'll see all of the different templates here. Now, these sort of orangey red color ones, actually the redder colored ones, these are just generic Eloqua templates. So they're not branded for your organization. They're just very generic. They're ready to go. Now, some of you will be using the blank HTML editor as well. It's this one here, the blank design email. That's the email editor that's being retired. So at the moment, all Eloqua users actually have 3 editors that they can play with. There's the blank design email, the blank HTML editor, and then the new editor, which is all of these red templates that you can see. So again, it's the blank design email that is being retired. Now, if you have any assets that you've currently built, that you've built in the design email, that's fine. They're not going to delete anything, that's for sure. You'll just get to a point where you won't be able to create new ones, and at a point where you won't be able to edit them. So if you get to a stage where you need to edit some of these older emails, then you'll need to rebuild those emails within the new editor. And honestly, I've found that process to vary from maybe 15 to 20 minutes. If you're using a template, it's very fast, so it's not a huge amount of work. But of course, it does depend on the volume of emails that you have. At this stage, I don't have a date from Oracle as to when that's going to be retired, but we would anticipate that probably being retired at some point in 2019. And you can see here from Marketing Cube, there's a range of templates, and the most commonly used ones you can see are the user group templates as well. But we're going to start from scratch and just show you some of the basics and some of the things that we've learned over the last few months using the new editor. So what I'm going to do, and again, if you want to follow along, if you've got Eloqua open, why don't you go ahead and do the same as me and choose one column with button, which is the third icon moving in from the left-hand side of the template chooser. So we click on Choose, and this will be a new experience. So for those who build a lot of emails, This is a new experience. And one of the primary reasons that Eloqua prompts you to do this is that you can't send yourself, remember, you can't send yourself a test email until you have a subject line and an email group assigned. You can always change these later, but I find I'm generally in the habit of going ahead and putting something in here. So I'm just going to put in here a little bit of copy. The nice thing is I can also add a field merge, or I can actually add dynamic content as well. So a field merge will be the usual suspect. So it's something like someone's first name. You can drop that in, for instance. If you've got dynamic content though, let's have a look. What have we got? 2018. Just doing a search. Okay. I should have planned this earlier. But obviously, if it's going to be dynamic content, there we go. We'll do that one. All right. So that's a piece of dynamic content that has been dropped in there, and that was for an event we had back in February of this year. So what that does, it delivers obviously a slightly different subject line based on the contact profile of that particular individual. So dynamic content can also be used there in your subject line, which is kind of cool. Then, of course, you'll be familiar with the process of selecting a email group, and I'm going to choose the Eloqua user group. The preview text is not required from the point of view of sending yourself a test email, and there's two ways to do it. You can enter something in here if you want to, or you can actually do it in the editor. I find the window they give you in the editor is a little bit bigger. That's the only reason I generally choose to do it there. So we click on Design Email, and we're in. So once we're in, a few things automatically take place. One is the footer is automatically assigned based on the email group that we selected. And so that gets loaded there at the bottom of the page. And then really now it's up to us to start to build out the email. So if I double click here on the box that's already in place, you can see I can drop my copy in. And once your copy is in, you can start to do things. Now, if you're actually creating this from a template that you've created, there are a few styling things that you can add. So for instance, if we were going to turn this into a template, what I could do is set some defaults. So potentially, maybe my default font is Helvetica, and potentially my color is a gray, like so. That's probably a bit light, a little bit darker, like so. And so that will then apply the styling through the entire email. So the font will be the same, etc., color, etc. You can also adjust the color of hyperlinks. So if you want it to be a more brilliant blue, you can do that. And you'll notice that you can also add some CSS. And so what we've done is we've added a little bit of CSS to some of our emails, but more so to our landing page. So with the CSS, you'll need to obviously have someone in the team who is able to extract that, whether it's from the website or however you do it, and then you can paste that in. So once we then save that CSS is then captured within that template. Excuse me. So anybody else then that accesses the template that you've created will have the CSS in there already. And the same logic here applies to landing pages as well. It's exactly the same process. So we can drop some CSS there. Just a couple of things from cosmetic point of view. We've kind of found that putting a little bit of extra padding on the edges seems to create a bit of a nicer feel, which is good. And so padding can be accessed. You'll notice as soon as you click on the text box that the menu over here on the left-hand side of the screen begins to adjust or change. And so again, we can add a bit more padding there as well. If we want to go to various font sizes, we can do that as well using the editor like so, with this pop-up menu. So as soon as you double-click on the text, you'll see the pop-up menu appears, which is helpful. Okay. Then the other key thing that we've figured out over the last several months is the layout brackets. You'll notice these appear in a more orange highlight versus when I click on a piece of content, it's more of this reddy pink sort of color. So you'll notice the two options there. So again, if I click slightly out of the box, I get the layout box created. If I click inside, I then get the content highlighted like so. So what I've found is that when you're building larger emails, you want to be careful, or it makes your life easier if you can keep things within layout areas. So how do we do that? So over on the left-hand side at the top, you've got the design components. And in the design components, you've got content and layout. And one of the early mistakes I made was I kept trying to drag things in, which you can do like so, but then, and you'll see when you drop it into the content, it creates the connection for you, which is what you want. But what I was doing, I was not creating the connection between the design components and the layout. So if I wanted, for instance, a separate piece of layout down here, I can then drop the text in. So what that delivers to me now is that's one layout section, and that's a different layout section. Now the reason that's helpful, again, if I drag in a button, for example, so again, you can see that's now one piece of layout. So if I wanted to do some additional styling, perhaps I wanted to, and I'm just going to choose a revolting color to prove the point, is I can now apply a background color to that entire layout section without having to come in and actually put a background color behind each of those content pieces. So again, we have one layout section with one color, and now a different layout section. So in order to start the layout section, you need to drag in a layout, and then from there, drop in your relevant images or any piece of content that you're looking to add. So again, you can see that's created like so. Now that button was in the template earlier, so if I just delete that and then grab another button and drop it in, that should give me one layout. So you can see now I've got 1, 2, 3 layout sections. So that process, making sure that we understand the relationship between the design components and the layout, makes your life a lot easier. Let me show you an example of where I didn't get this quite right. Which means I need to go back and do a little bit of rejigging, but anyway. So this is a template that we're working on, which is meant to be as sort of a go-to template that we can come into and then just simply delete the various sections that we want. And so you can see here, for instance, ideally, when I click here, ideally what I should have is, you can see I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces of layout, whereas in reality, that should just be one section of layout. So what I need to do is just simply delete those sections and then re-pop them in so that when I click here on the left-hand side, I can just delete that entire section or that one layout. Because you can see over here, you've got this button. So you can imagine right now that would be annoying because if I wanted to move that entire layout section to another area of the email, I've actually got 4 pieces to move instead of just one. So user error on my behalf, we'll get that fixed and make that a much nicer experience. So on the subject of templates, you can see as we scroll down here, what we've done is basically tried to think about all the different scenarios where we would work with different types of communications, different things that we would do, and you can see the variances there. We're still kind of fleshing this out as to exactly what we want it to do, but you can see that gives you a much better starting point than potentially just simply going to the email editor, clicking on create an email, and grabbing just a regular template. Because the challenge you've got with the regular templates is that they're clearly not branded for you. So they're a great starting point, but what we want to do is come in here, modify them and adjust them and get them to a point where we can actually have a template like the ones that we're playing with here today. All right, so adding images. No real trick here. The key thing is, as is always generally the case, is to always upload images to Eloqua in the size that you want them to be. Some people, let me just find an image here. I'm just going to show you one other thing. All of the emails that you've received for the user group, I think certainly for this month, last month, and I think the month, maybe the month before, I'm not sure, I can't remember, we're all built in the new editor. Now, you might have noticed when I added that particular image, the image itself is 756 pixels wide, and this is a nice enhancement on the interface from a user point of view is the pixel dimensions of your images are right here. That wasn't the case in the old editor. You kind of had to go off to the image library and confirm what that was. So that's kind of nice. But you'll notice it's 756, but when we look at my email, where am I? If we look at my email, my canvas width is currently 600. Now, what we've decided to do is we're going to use 756 as the default for most of our emails. The reason being is that we look at the careful analysis of who's opening our emails and the devices that they're using to open them. And most of our customers and most of our prospects are opening our emails on their desktop, which means they've got a lot of screen real estate there to play with. And if we're sending emails that are just 600 pixels wide, it's very likely there's a lot of screen real estate on either side. So we figured if we run with 756, that will give us a completely mobile responsive output, as you would expect, but give us a little bit more white space to play with from a design point of view. Now, one thing I've noticed a couple of times is some customers adjusting images. Now, the interface definitely allows you to do that, and you'll notice I can go here to auto fit, and what it does, it then starts to do some adjusting. And you can slide this scale to get it to kind of where you want. Now, because I've set it 100%, it's 756 wide. But if I change my email to 600, it will adjust. The challenge is that it does look lovely here. That's not a problem. And I can switch it to mobile mode, and I can see it looks fine there as well. The greatest challenge is Outlook. Okay, so it's highly likely that should I send this email at 600 pixels wide with a banner image that is 756 pixels wide, there's every chance it'll look fine in Gmail, it'll look fine in Apple Mail, probably even Hotmail, etc. But once it gets to Outlook on the desktop, there's every chance that particular banner image will be much wider than the copy that would sit underneath. So the general rule of thumb is I stick to autofit on those, but I'm also pretty consistent in making sure that I upload the images to be the dimension that I know I need them to be. So if it's 756, I upload them as 756. The height obviously is not that much of an issue. It's more about the width that is the issue. Okay. So I might just remove that. Now, buttons and styling. So again, just looking at different things that people have done, I noticed that some customers are using JPEGs for buttons because they're kind of styled, obviously, with a little bit of work from your design teams. The challenge, again, with using a JPEG as a button has more to do, again, with Outlook, people who receive your emails in Outlook. So the challenge there is that because it is an image, they usually have to click a button called download the images, which means they don't see your call to action. So the button itself does enable you to do quite a bit of styling. You can modify like so, change colors, change font sizes, etc. What have we got? Let's say download now, for instance. Maybe you want to put a chevron or something in there like that. You can also adjust the circumference of the edges, so if you want a more rounded look, etc. You can also do full width or fit to text. Now, if you want to do full width and you've got it in a full width column, you're like, well, that's not really what I want. That's not really looking like how I want it to look. So a workaround is to come back and look at your layouts. If you grab a layout piece, for instance, like so, then you can drop it in there like so. Okay, let me repeat that again. I probably should. Okay, so sorry, this is one thing I've noticed. Sometimes when you're dropping things into a sectional layout, it can get a little bit confusing. So I find if I do that, I'll do something like that, and then we can adjust the colors, etc. Whoops. Like so, different colors and play around with. So that enables you to create it in full width or fit to text, whichever you want. So if you want to go full width, but you don't want it to be crazy, too wide, keeping in mind you can also adjust the columns. So when you drop in any of the layout pieces with the columns, it's not fixed. You can adjust and move them around, and you can do it like so. So you've got plenty of options there in relation to how that will look from a cosmetic point of view. Okay. The other nice thing I've noticed is once you style your buttons, there's then no need to really come over here and drag more buttons in. It's much easier to simply use the duplicate function over here on the far right hand side. And that way your styling is done and you don't have to repeat the process. Now adding hyperlinks, there's a range of things you can do to put behind there. So with a download now button, there'd be a range of things you may want to send people to a landing page to access something, or directly to a file in storage. You can send them to a web page. System actions, probably something your administrator can walk you through, but that would be, for instance, having people subscribe to different email groups. They're considered system actions, so you can use some of those as well. Or if you want it a little bit old-fashioned, a bit retro, you might want to have them click on that to create an email in their email client. So again, very similar to what you're familiar with at the moment using Eloqua, really no change, but that's where you would add all those various bits and pieces. All right, so this is an email that most of you would have received in relation to accessing or registering for the user group. And what I wanted to show you was something that had moved, which was the click-through report. So it used to be over here in the Actions menu, but it moved to the Reports area, which is the click-through report. So obviously that's only functions once you've actually sent the email where people have actually clicked. So let's have a look at this particular email and we'll get a bit of a feel for where people are clicking. Okay, so at Marketing Cube, we always put hyperlinks to landing pages behind banners. So you can see there's one person who's clicked up there, 9 people clicked there, and there'll be one person who's clicked there. And actually there's a few more that have done down there. So this is quite interesting from a design point of view, right? Because there's certainly merit in possibly doing 2 buttons, especially if people are looking at things on a mobile device and they've got to scroll down and scroll back up again, for instance. So taking some time to actually have a look at where people are engaging and how they're clicking on your various emails and where they're clicking is a good thing. So we can see here these people are clearly fans. They're like, yep, that's fine, I'm going to register. These people obviously wanted to read through a little bit further, get some more information, and then they've clicked through from there. So this particular email is the email that would have went to people who didn't open the first one. So this was sort of a repeat or a second email. Okay, it looks like we have a question sitting here. Let me just have a quick look. Yulia says, what is the padding between the layouts by default in CSS? I found that the padding in Eloqua is different from the email I get in Outlook or Gmail. Okay, so defaults. So if I drag in, let me just drag in a layout and then drag in text, we can see here that 10 pixels is the default that is applied. And then from there, I can obviously modify. I can either make the changes all the way around. The maximum that I can go to here, though, is 30 pixels. If I wanted to increase that, there's a specific design component called a spacer. And so the spacer enables me to go up to 100 pixels to create obviously a much greater space above and below. Okay, so from a CSS point of view, I'm not sure if that's the right term or not, Yulia. I'd have to check, but there's no CSS that you can access through the native template. What you can do is add additional CSS, which is what we showed you here earlier. So if you wanted to put something in here that would override the default potentially of those 10 pixels, then that would have to be accommodated here within the template, which you would need to add. And then once you save that as a template, anybody that accesses it will have access to that same degree of functionality and design from a CSS point of view. Images. Images are easily added, which is kind of nice. We just simply drop in a relevant piece, drop in the image icons like so, and let me see if I can find something. I've got a range of images here. Yeah, let's choose the Shangri-La Hotel. And actually, I just did something that I'm going to delete those just for a moment. So again, you can drop your image in and perhaps put some padding around it. Do that on all sides. We'll take that up to 20 pixels, for instance, maybe back to 15. The reason I remove these two here from the right-hand side is because what I wanted to do is just get my styling down for what I wanted here. Again, I might want to adjust that and put a background color behind it, potentially. So then if I just duplicate that, like so, and then drag those into those other boxes, it then makes it much easier. What I can do is then go to Replace, find the other images that I wanted to drop in. So again, we'll choose the Shangri-La Hotel here in Sydney. And the benefit of doing that is I'm then not having to style each of those three boxes individually. I simply need to style the first box and then simply find the relevant images and drop them in. So now they all look the same dimensions, etc. If I go to mobile view, you can see they all fit nicely as well. The one thing I found is you do need to play around a little bit with the size dimensions of your images. You need to do a little bit of testing because if you do the math, 756 divided by 3, you end up with much smaller images than 500. But the challenge I find with that is that when you go to mobile, the images then look tiny. So that would be, what, about 252 each. Let me see if I've got a tiny image. 250. It's not a good example, but we'll run. This is 200 wide. So if I drop that one in, and let's say I duplicate it, and then drop it in here, I'll just delete these just to show you what I mean. Okay, if I then go to mobile view, you can see now I've got a lot more space on the left and the right-hand side when viewed in mobile. So if that's not a problem, that's fantastic. But if you're looking to have a fuller image, then you realize that once you go to mobile view, that 200 really doesn't quite fill. So what I'm trying to do there, and again, keeping in mind we're using a 756 wide template, is just to deliver a nicer experience potentially with better quality images. So just have a little bit of a play with that in relation to your image size. And then you can work out what's the best. But then once you've got your template built, you can put placeholders in, like you saw here. So if I go to emails and select, what is that, 756, here we go. Okay, so you can see here what we've done. We've created placeholder images as well. So then the user knows exactly what they should be focusing on from a dimension size. So here we've got 500 by 500. And again, you'll see that once I go to mobile view, that they fit nicely and sort of maintain the design and look and feel that we're looking for in that particular template. So that's the reason for that. Now, there's another question here. Let me just go back to the click-through report. So Yana asked the question, hi Derek, going back to click-through visualizer, what is the date range of the clicks captured in the report itself? So my understanding is that when you look at just the email, the date range would be for the life of that particular email. So it'll be wherever that particular email has been used. But let's see if we can quickly find an answer to that question in the Help Center. So click through Visualizer Report. Okay, so good to know. Okay, the first point on good to know is don't expect it to show you the same metrics as Insight. For example, the click-through visualizer report shows the most up-to-date click-through information. The same click-through information can take up to 24 hours to appear in Insight. The click-through visualizer report includes click-throughs from test sends. Insight does not. Okay, so the comment I made there was that for the life of the email, any clicks, etc., regardless of it being in one campaign, two campaigns, three campaigns, or even from tests, all of those clicks are calculated. The click-through visualizer report relates to only the most recent version of the email. Insight shows click-through activity after the email was sent, regardless of the version. So the click-through, let me just clarify in my head what that means. The click-through visualizer report relates to only the most recent version of the email. So once the last time you save that particular email and you drop it onto a campaign canvas, it will show you all click-throughs up until that date, but that sort of implies that it resets itself. Okay, Jana, you've created another question. Let me get an answer to that. I'll see if I can find an answer just to clarify, because I don't know about you, but that third bullet point kind of throws me a little bit. So that's fine. We'll have a look at that. But you can see how quickly we've gone straight to the Help Center, and we've found pretty much the information that you're looking for. And so you'll find there's some metrics as well as to what makes up those click-throughs and how they work, and then obviously how to access it, etc. Are there any other questions there, guys? We might jump into the landing page editor, which will take us a little bit less time because it's pretty much the same, which is kind of nice. So landing pages. So the landing pages are currently available in what we call controlled availability. That's just kind of software speak by Oracle, which means a limited number of Eloqua clients currently have access to it. But some good news. Release 18D, which is due in November of this year. I was just literally looking last night. Our understanding was that they were going to make this generally available in the new year, probably around February. But it looks like they've brought that forward, which is great. So you'll see it. Everybody will see the new landing page editor shortly, which will be November. What are we now? October. So it's about a month away from now. I haven't got the exact date, but I believe it's about a month away from now, towards the end of November. So we expect additional enhancements. We expect additional enhancements to the landing page editor for those that have been using it. We're expecting more to come, and we'll keep you posted on those as soon as we know. But most of this information is available within top liners within the Eloqua release information area. So what we want to do today is really just try and give you a little bit of a heads up for those that don't have access today to the controlled availability version. We will walk you through and give you a little bit of a head start on what to look at. So let's go and have a closer look. So first thing is obviously arriving at the landing page editor area within Eloqua, which you can see here. And the process, just as with the email, is much the same. So you'll see the icons very similar in relation to the template chooser and what you should be looking at. And so what we'll do is we'll just choose something here to play with. Let's go with one column with form and choose. And this really just gives you a head start, so to speak. And so you can see you've arrived like so. And then you'll see that the menus here, again, look pretty much the same as the email editor, certainly the content and layout components. There's a couple of different pieces of content, but the styling you can see here. Again, you'll see the additional CSS option that is available here. And text defaults, so same thing. If I want to make sure that everything is Helvetica and gray, I can hardwire that in. Again, if I want to make sure my hyperlinks are a really vibrant blue, I can do that as well. Obviously, this begins to change a little. We have email groups previously, but now you need to select your relevant subdomain and then obviously put in your URL. So I'm just going to put in October user group as an example. And you can see it then displays it down here. So by clicking here, once we save it, by clicking here, you'll then be able to see what it looks like online. Your redirect functions are available here as well for those of you that have been using those. You've also got the ability, by default, it's visible externally, but I can turn that off. So if the page you're working on is maybe a little bit sensitive in relation to information, you may want to keep that offline, so to speak, and only visible from within Eloqua. And once you're ready to go live, make sure it's externally visible, like so. Redirect functions, you can see there's the ability to add JavaScript should you need to. Any additional meta tags can be added there. And again, just to re-emphasize, the CSS is under the styling tab. And again, you can add additional CSS here as well. Let me just get the chat function open again so I can see that. Okay. All right, so what do we do? Where do we start? Well, first thing you probably want to do is change the width of the canvas. Maybe 900, maybe 1080, depending on what you wanted to achieve, etc. And then off you go, basically. So if I jump into my search function, again, looking for an image that I know has been configured to fit correctly. I can choose something like this. So I have that in place like so. Then you can, just as you play with the layout areas within the email editor, it's exactly the same here. So for instance, if I drop in something like that, I may want to take that content piece, which is the form, and have the form actually sit over on the far right-hand side. Obviously, web pages, a little bit of space is kind of nice, so I can put some space potentially between the image and what I'm doing. The layout area, or the background color, I can change as well. So if I want to go to white to make it nice and crisp, I can do that. I probably want to put my logo at the top of the page as well. So again, I can drop in a placeholder like so, then find the logo and drop the logo in. And we've got lots and lots and lots of different logos. But for fun, we'll choose the Oracle Marketing Cloud logo, give it a little bit of a plug. Now you can see that's a little bit large. Now, the luxury of working on a web page is that web browsers are a lot more intelligent than email clients. So here, I would be less concerned in relation to adjusting sizing and using the auto fit. And you can see I can also adjust to left, right, etc., depending on where I want that particular image to sit. So to take care of that. Adding hyperlinks behind, again, exactly the same process, no different than an email. So you'll see the range of options you've got available there. We can start to drop in some text, and I'll grab my trusty lorem ipsum and paste that in like so. So you can see the grey and the Helvetica has stuck from my styling that I selected earlier. And of course, you can adjust sizes as well. So again, once you've done some configuration and a little bit of styling, I find it much easier just to duplicate those sections versus actually trying to start again and then having to redo everything. So then maybe that becomes a heading. Maybe I want it to be bold, for instance. Now you probably want to play with some padding because maybe it's a little bit too big. So we can adjust that like so. Maybe take that down to 0. Leave that one at 10 so it looks a bit snug. And you can see that layout piece again has contained everything within that particular place. Adding forms is absolutely simple. Let me just find a relevant form. Pick the form from this month's user group, for instance, and drop that in. Now, one thing that we've identified from a styling point of view, and this is where we would come back to the styling area and looking at adding some CSS over here. So if I jump in to the landing page that you all filled in, well, actually that won't work, sorry, because I used a different template. Let's try, there's some events we're running at the moment for, in conjunction with our friends at Oracle. One of them targets those people who are an association. So we thought, let's use the new editor. Let's give it a crack. So these are live campaigns that we have running that you can see. So here it is sort of in the back end. But you'll notice there's some styling that's taken place here on the form. Now, that can't be achieved using the native functions within the editor at this stage. I don't know if that's going to change in release 18D, but at the moment, the way we've achieved that is by adding some CSS. And so we've now got that wrapped in, sitting in our templates for the landing pages. So each time I download them, I don't have to re-look at this CSS. It's just there, and which means that my forms will then appear as you see them. So let's have a look at what that looks like online. So if I click that link there on the left-hand side, and you'll see there's the page live on screen. And so it's styled, it's the font is white, etc., the boxes and so on and so forth, the button is black, etc., etc. So that's that. And so we've just, this particular piece at the bottom of the page, one of our very cool developers here at Marketing Cube created that for me. That's actually just a piece of shared content. So that's because it's a joint campaign, we need to make sure that people are able to click off to the Oracle pages, etc. So one of our very talented designers or developers simply went into the Oracle site, did a little bit of copying, etc. You'll notice it looks a little bit odd there, but when you actually see it online, there it is. So it now looks a lot more like the Oracle site, which is what we were trying to achieve. Okay. Any particular questions, guys, in relation to the landing page editor? Actually, I can see another question here. Question from the other above. Yeah, what is the need for? Okay, so a question from Lara. She asks, what is the need for a redirect? Great question. So the redirect function, which you can see down here, there are a couple of ways that you can use that function, right? So you might have people register for an event, then you want to deliver a confirmation page. What you could then do is have that confirmation page automatically redirect to your website. After 30 seconds, 60 seconds, you give it a time frame, you can see automatically redirect, wait for X number of seconds, and then put in the full URL of where you want to go to. So, Lara, if I use you guys as an example, you had that Cape Cod campaign recently in relation to the different design functions and materials that people could purchase. So maybe you have a webinar that's talking about that, giving people a chance to register to attend a webinar to learn more about those products. So once they register and you present them with the confirmation page, what you could then do is redirect them directly into your website, not just to the home page, but actually into the website, to that specific part of the website that talks more about the Cape Cod, I hope I've got that right, but the Cape Cod materials and things that they could purchase for the house. So the redirect is great because it helps to drive a little bit more traffic to your website. And just creates I think a slightly better experience. Once they've got that confirmation page, there's not much else really for them to do unless you put a lot of information on that confirmation page. The redirect is also really helpful if you have a campaign potentially where you're using Eloqua landing pages and the content for that campaign has an expiry date. And look, perhaps with Christmas coming up, that may well be the case for a number of different landing pages. So you may want to be able to, once that campaign is completed, either remove the page. The problem with removing the page is if someone comes from an email to that page, they'll just get a message saying this page is no longer available. A much better experience is to actually automatically redirect them. So they'll click on the link in an old email, they'll come to a page that you no longer want to be visible to them. As soon as they reach it, it'll automatically redirect to a more current page that you want to have. So those redirect functions, whether automatic or even to close the window, can be quite helpful. It all depends on deadlines and the content, etc., that you're sharing, but quite helpful. Hopefully that answers your question, Lara. So the other nice thing about the editors, both email and landing page, is that I'm seeing a lot more use of dynamic content and also shared content. So this piece here is shared content. Now, if I click on edit, it'll take me straight to the shared library. And this we understand in 2019 is getting a little bit of a refix. So I can't do this because this is all HTML and there's no way just using a drag and drop function could I achieve this particular look and feel. So that's where the geniuses, as we call them, upstairs, because they literally are upstairs at Marketing Cube, those guys have been able to create that for me, etc. But this whole interface that you can see in front of you, we understand in 2019 will be changing and will be this type of an interface. So you'll be able to build your shared content and your dynamic content without the need of HTML. And so you'll have a design built just like this with components and layout, which you can then build more content, which is great because I find the shared content and dynamic content I'm using a lot more. I just need a little bit of a hand at the moment, but once those editors change, it will be a little bit more independent, which is kind of cool. I'll show you a quicker one we did for a demo the other day. So there's a built-in function within the landing page editor to make your content just a little bit more engaging. That's this ability to have a slideshow. Now, of course, we've used the slideshow here as the banner. It doesn't have to be for the banner, of course. It could just be a smaller section down in the page itself. I'm not suggesting to you from a design point of view, and obviously you can see who that individual company was. What we're trying to do here is just max out and show pretty much every piece of functionality that was available. But if you just need to maybe catch people's attention, then the slider is a nice way to achieve that, and just gives you the chance or the ability to show just a little bit more information. And you can see we've got the social share buttons, etc., in place there as well. I've got some news for you too, actually, about the social share and what's changing there shortly, which is nice. And so this particular form that you see on the screen right now, there's no styling there at all. So that's created just using the core template. There's no CSS that's been applied. So it's just using a grey background. That's quite easy, but no other changes. Well, if we don't have any other questions in relation to the two editors, we might quickly jump on and have a close look at what's coming and what's new. There's a few quite exciting things coming that I would like to share with you. So let's have a look. Okay, so what's coming? The next release of Eloqua, and you may recall that the release process changed earlier this year, and is now we're looking at 4 releases a year, which take place pretty much in the middle of our quarters. Let's have a look at some of the information that's available. So this is the cool one, and earlier than we had expected. So the new landing page editor will move from controlled availability, or CA, to general availability, being GA. So in the middle of November, everybody will have access to the new landing page editor, which is great news. There's also a new dashboard coming for closed loop reporting, and I'm excited to have a closer look at that and understand how we can best take advantage of that. So once we get a closer look and understand that, we will be in contact. There's a new app for those customers using Salesforce and Eloqua. There's a new integration app which takes advantage of the updated technology, the integration technology and platform that has been built within Eloqua. You may be familiar with programs within Eloqua. That technology is still running and will be running for quite some time, but there's new technology that's been built in which basically speeds things up. So you'll notice, though, that that integration app is available from a controlled availability point of view, CA. So if you wanted to explore and have a closer look at that, you will need to submit a service request with Eloqua in order to, with My Oracle support, in order to gain access to that. Why would you do that? The main reason is that it's much faster. And I'm talking getting a lead from Eloqua to Salesforce can take up to 15 minutes. In most cases, it happens literally within minutes, but it can take up to 15 minutes. However, we understand with the new integration, you're looking at seconds versus minutes. So that's great news for Salesforce and Eloqua customers. Okay, what else is coming? So authenticated microsites and secure inbox. We're really keen to explore this one. What this means essentially is that you'll be able to build a microsite using your landing pages within Eloqua. So you might have 5 or 6 or 7 landing pages that make up a microsite. But the authenticated piece means that you'll be able to put a login and password function in front of that. So if you have content that is high value content that you want to share with people, but you want them to actually have to log in to get to it, then this could be a solution for you to look at. So again, at the moment, that is in controlled availability. So again, if there's interest from you to do that, please have a chat with us, or you can request access through the My Oracle support again. So something else to look at. Content Experience Cloud. I honestly need to tell you that after digging around over the last 24 hours, I still need to get a little bit more information into exactly what this is, but I will endeavor to do that and try and get some information into our blog for you. So I won't continue fluffing on that one because I'm not 100% sure. But this is the fun one. Has anybody heard of Add This? You've probably seen Add This a million times. When you go to a website, they often will have the share, social share, but not just social share. It's Gmail, Open Outlook, etc., etc. You click those at the side of a website, or depending on where they've been configured, they're all sort of brightly colored, matching the colors of the different providers. So Oracle bought that company, I think it was nearly 3 years ago. It was early 2016, I think it was. So they purchased that company with all sorts of intentions. One of those intentions was to build it into Eloqua. So in 18D, you'll see that that functionality become available, and so we will work with you to understand that and how you can incorporate that. So that makes the social sharing function, I think, a little bit easier, and actually gives an increased number. I mean, I can't remember the number, but it's like 40 plus different social sites, plus the ability to share in Outlook, share in Gmail, everything. Yeah, there's a whole swag of them there. So you can see more if you go to addthis.com. Have a visit there, and you can get a little bit of an idea as to exactly what that's going to do and the ability that offers you. Now, the other exciting one is Litmus. So you need to be a Litmus customer, but in my experience, most of our customers are Litmus customers. What you'll be able to do, though, moving forward is to look at email previews directly from within Eloqua and the Eloqua email editor. So you can see the little caveat down the bottom here. Requires a Litmus subscription, but that is a great step. For those who are more seasoned Eloqua customers, you might remember some time ago, it would have been 2 or 3 years ago, there was some type of functionality like that in Eloqua. Litmus is certainly an industry leader with this type of technology. We use Litmus ourselves at Marketing Cube, and for many of our customers on the line, we've been through this process for you. But with your own subscription, you'll be able to access it directly from within Eloqua, which is great news. Alrighty, so that's our webinar for today. I'm just checking here to see if we have any other questions, which we don't appear to do. If anybody does have any questions, happy to stay on the line for a few more minutes if you wanted to present some questions, or if you'd like to shoot those through via email, happy to look at those for you as well. But thank you very much for joining us today. We're just 3 minutes over, so thanks for your patience. Have a great week. We look forward to seeing you next month, and happy email sending, everybody. Take care. Cheers. Bye-bye.